welcome back, RoxxStars. This is going to be a very, very, very special episode for me of From the Vault. Rikki Roxx coming at you with the retro action figure review. I'm always talking about bringing old school to the new school, and today we're going to get as old school as you can get. We're going to take it back to 1984, and we're going to be talking about a little something special from one of the greatest action figure lines ever created. We're talking about Kenner and their DC Superpowers collection. This is, to many people, still the greatest DC Comics action figure line that's ever been done. I don't necessarily agree, but I actually totally see where they're going from. I've got a lot of fond memories of this line and a lot of heartbreak as well. So we're going to be talking about all of that in this first look that we've done at DC Superpowers from Kenner. You know, when I was a kid, huge fan of Superman, Batman and Robin, a little bit less with Flash, Green Lantern, but I loved what I saw of DC right from the beginning. And obviously, when you're 3, 4 years old, when you like something, you want toys of it. It's just the way it works. So, luckily for me, it should have been lucky for me, Kenner was hitting home runs everywhere back in the 80s. I mean, their toy lines are still legendary. All the way from this line to Real Ghostbusters, to RoboCop. They did a lot of cool stuff. So Kenner was always one of my favorites, right up there with Mattel. So they got the DC license in the 80s, and they went on to put out an amazing line of toys. Really awesome stuff. They did a lot of stuff too. They did 34 figures, I think something like 8 vehicles. They did the Hall of Justice playset. They did a lot of cool stuff, even though the line was only around for 2 years, 84 to 86. So even though it was only around briefly, it was so impactful that you go online, there's still people talking about it to this day. There's Facebook groups about it, people who collect them, people who customize them. I go online, I go on eBay, I go on Etsy, I see people selling customs, I see people doing tutorials on how to do customs of these figures. I've done a few customs myself of these figures. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot to love about the Superpowers line. So I was always a huge fan, sometimes more in theory than in practice, unfortunately. Like I said, as much as I have a lot of fondness and great memories of the toy line, I also have some heartbreak and bad memories. Specifically, when I was real little, about 3 years old, I remember going to the store with my mom and dad, and plan was they were going to take me on a little spree. My dad had a real good job when I was real little, so he used to just take me to Toys R Us once in a blue or Kmart and just say, get $100 worth of stuff, just whatever you want. We wouldn't do this all the time. It's not like we were rich, but, every few weeks, maybe every 2 months or something like that when I was real little and he was making good 80s money, I'd get $100 spree, every couple of months we'd do this. And so this was the plan on this day. But Mom had back then what you call a funny little drinking problem. And I don't remember details, but I remember being in the store and picking up figures off the shelves and putting them in the cart, and all the greats. Superman was there, Batman, Joker, they all made their way into the cart. But for some reason, Mom was in a real bad mood, and her and Dad started arguing right in the middle of the store. I remember people looking at us, and, it got bad. I was traumatized. I was a real little kid, so this was a big deal. It was hard. And somehow Mom got the keys and took off, and she had the keys and the money. So me and Dad were left at the store with neither of those things, so we had to take a cab home. And I left with 0 toys. I went from going on a big spree and getting all these toys to going home with nothing. And let me tell you something, brother. I still have nightmares about it to this day. I still have nightmares about that. That is how traumatizing it is to be a 3-year-old kid and get cock-blocked like that. Shopping cart full of toys, and then for something you have nothing to do with and no control over, you go home with nothing. And then, this was right at the time when they were real, real hot, and they were switching waves over. So I never did get my Batman. I never did get my Joker. I never did get my Superman. That was probably the hardest. Growing up in the 80s, not having a Kenner Superpowers Superman figure, despite being a huge Superman fan. It was hard. Real hard. And, but I did have some of them. I did have a few. I had Darkseid was one of my favorites. I had Martian Manhunter. I had Cyclotron. I still have all these guys, actually. But I didn't have some of the heavy hitters that came out early on because they got swapped out with the new waves. Yeah, the line was only 3 waves deep, and like I said, they only made like 34 figures or something, but people still love them, and they pay a lot of money for them in pristine condition. I don't have any in pristine condition. I don't have any in package. I don't even have packaging to show you guys. But what I will do is I'll take a real quick trip and show you guys, before we get to the figure I'm going to talk about today, real quick, I want you to kind of glimpse what it was like to be that 3-4-year-old kid at the time. So one of the things you got to realize is the impact of marketing to children and how awesome it is. Don't let them tell you it's not. When you're a kid, you love being marketed to, because then you get to go bug your parents to buy you fucking toys. I know how it works. I know it's a fucking scam, but it's a fun scam. You get toys. Fuck them. They got money. So what you do, you'd flip open a comic book and you would see this amazing print ad of Superman and Lex Luthor and the whole line. And I don't have a comic book handy. This thing, every time I opened a page of a comic and saw this staring at me, I was in heaven. So that was awesome to see. And then, another thing that was cool was the amazing commercials they had for the Superpowers action figures. And I'm pretty sure we can get away with showing one of those, right? We could probably just rip one of those and put it right here. So I guess that's what we're going to do, because again, when you're a kid watching Saturday morning cartoons, watching Super Friends, and then you'd see this fucking thing happen, you would run to your parents and be like, dude, we got to go to the store right now and get the Batmobile. And, hopefully your parents weren't scumbags and you'd go to the store and you get your Batmobile. But yeah, check this out and see if you could feel what I felt back then. Dig it.
Coming from the farthest reaches of the universe to challenge the worst villains on Earth are the most powerful heroes ever in the battle of the Superpowers collection. Superpowers figures with power action, each sold separately.
There's no power to build. Squeeze them, they've got power action like Superman and Batman. Here comes Hawkman. Watch out for Brainiac's power action. And each comes with a mini comic.
The Superpowers collection, Superman, Batman, Brainiac, Hawkman, and other figures with power action, each sold separately, new from Kenner.
So yeah, between those ads that were in every comic book and those commercials that were on TV all the time, and the fact that you could still watch the Superpowers cartoon show on television, when you were a kid in the 80s, you really wanted these action figures. So what were the DC Superpowers collection? What was the DC Superpowers collection? Twas. Anyway, so what were these figures all about? Very simple. They were a line of 4-inch action figures of all of DC's heavy hitters, from Superman, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman, Darkseid, Lex Luthor. They had a ton of some of the most famous DC characters, from guys like Brainiac all the way down to guys like Cyclotron. You had guys like Martian Manhunter and Captain Marvel, and you had the Parademons and Mantis. So you had a little bit of everything mixed in there. As the waves went on, they started kind of reaching for characters to fill it out. Ironically, since it was the end of the series, a lot of those lesser-known "who the hell is this guy" characters are worth a lot of money. Notoriously, Cyborg, with all his arm attachments, is worth a lot of money. Over $1,000 usually he'll go for loose, because they didn't do a lot of him. We're not here to talk about him today. But yeah, so the reason the line was called Superpowers was because each 4-inch figure came with a gimmick where usually you'd squeeze the legs or the arm or something like that, and they would throw a punch or a kick or some kind of action move, action feature. So this was common in a lot of toys back then, but this was Kenner's spin on it using the DC characters. So, DC superpowers. Every character had his own superpower. Darkseid, to me, had one of the coolest because he had a little strip of red on top of his helmet. His eyes were made out of like a red quartz plastic type thing. So light would go in from the top of or behind his head, and his eyes would glow. You know, really neat, simple little gimmick like that, but it just helped put the figures way, way over. Another cool thing about the figures is that each of them came with a little tiny comic book. And they would kind of sell the character to you. If you didn't know who Martian Manhunter was, or Green Lantern, or whatever, they'd give you a tiny little mini-comic, just like Mattel did with the He-Man toys. And the effect was just as great. It got you up to speed really quickly on who the characters were, and what they were all about, what their powers were. And I don't have too many of the originals left. Most of them fell apart because I was a dumb kid. What I do have are these two paperback volumes here. They're even roughly the same size as the original mini comics. I just found these on eBay. I think they were like $25 for the set. And this set has all 23 mini comics split up into 2 volumes. So all of the different comics that came with the actual figures are reprinted here. Nice colors, good paper, very crisp, very clean, you know. Again, they give you Volume 1, they got the Superman one, Wonder Woman, Batman and Robin, Flash, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Hawkman. You know, they got stories with the Joker, Luthor, Brainiac, Penguin. You know, so again, these were the comics that came with the figures. So I had to get these. Since, as a kid, the only mini comics I remember hanging on to, I had the Martian Manhunter one. I think I still have it, but it's all beat up. So I had to get these. These were a must. But yeah, because of circumstances, wasn't able to have a big collection of the DC Superpowers figures as a kid. I'm fixing that now. That's what this whole history lesson has been building up to. Within the last couple of years, I've finally started doing the work, getting out there, and slowly but surely accumulating a decent-sized collection of Kenner DC figures from the 80s. I don't have them all. I don't have a lot of Wave 3. I think I've got all of Wave 1 and like half of Wave 2 and a couple of vehicles. I'm getting there. I remember when I was a kid, I had the Supermobile and Lexor 7 and the Delta Probe. I had all those vehicles. I got to get some replacement parts for a couple of them. But yeah, we had a few things as a kid, but I didn't have everything I wanted. And what I didn't have that I wanted the most, and it was the first figure I knew I had to get when I did this dive to start to build Kenner DC Superpowers collection, the first figure on my list, obviously, absolutely, had to be Superman. Alright, so, had to get him right away. Real quick, what I want to show you is, we got some McFarlane Superpowers here. I wanted to show this off because this is actually kind of sort of what the original packages look like, since I don't have the original package. We'll cut away in a second and I'll show you a picture of the original package. But, yeah, the Kenner packaging looked a lot like this, right down to the logo placement being very, very similar. The only real difference, and I had to look it up just to be sure, is that Superman's pose is flipped from the way it was on the original Kenner packaging. You know, he's posed almost identically, but the side where he's got his arm up and everything is reversed. It's the other way on the original than it is here. So they did a cute little homage, and I really like that. But I just wanted to give you like a real quick glimpse, since I had this guy handy. This is very similar to what the original packages look like. And I'm going to show you the original packages just for the sake of completion. You know, got it back there. But yeah, I knew I had to get this guy here, so what we're going to do is like we always do, we're going to show him to you up close and personal. I want to get a couple things out of the way real quick. I did purchase him secondhand. He is used, and he has been lightly retouched. The seller, he kind of didn't tell me that he had done a bad job of retouching it, so I had to kind of retouch it. The cape is authentic original, and the action feature still works. So yeah, this is the first figure I bought, obviously, when I started my new adult Superpowers collection, not counting the ones I still had as a kid. So we're going to get up close with this guy. I'm excited. It's been a long time coming, but it ain't no joke. We're going to see in just a second how good this guy looks. Still to this day, one of the coolest likenesses of Superman, and a really iconic figure. Stick around. Here he is, the Man of Steel himself, Superman from Kenner's DC Superpowers collection. This was the first figure most kids got in their collection, him or Batman. Again, I wasn't lucky, I didn't have either one. Killed me as a kid, but so glad to have him now. This figure, again, has been very lightly retouched, but the cape is an original. It's got a little bit of scuff on the S, but this guy is quite a number of years old, and it has been played with. Looks like it probably fell at some point, because it looks like he maybe has a little nick taken out of the nose, too. But so yeah, the chest logo, I had to fill in a little bit of red on there. You know, there's some nicks taken out of it. Somebody else tried to repaint it once upon a time, didn't do a great job. One of these days I'll pick up a cleaner version of him. One that's a little bit more minty, but this is what I was able to pick up. This is what I have at hand, and I just couldn't wait any longer to jump into this line. So here it is. This is the one you get. This is the one we're doing. But it's a great representation of Superman. There were a few variants out there. I think there were at least 4 different versions, and there were some differences in the shape of the face, the placement and shape of the S logo, things like that, depending on the country of manufacture as well as the year, I believe. So there were a few variants out there. Not sure which one this is, but there's places online where you can look it up and find out, because I think a number of figures had small variants like that, but I think Superman had the most. But this one is probably the most common, I would think. This is the one I always would see as far as the S-shield placement, the shape of the face. You'll notice if you look, to me, it looks like they very subtly try to replicate a likeness of Christopher Reeve without going all the way there and maybe getting in trouble. They got as close as they could between Christopher Reeve and the comic book Superman, and I think it's a great likeness. You know, they went with little tiny dots for eyes, but, you know, it's a small figure. And it was Kenner. This was sometime after their Star Wars line blew up. You know, that's part of what helped them get the DC license in the first place. So with the shorter cape and the brighter kind of robin's egg blue almost, you definitely not only get the feel that it's a Reeve Superman, but it's definitely an early 80s Superman for sure. And it's a great version of it. It's a really great version of it. As a kid, this was all I ever would have hoped or wanted. So glad to have him now as an adult. So what he does is he squeezes his legs together and he throws a punch, just like in that iconic comic book advertisement that was so popular, that you saw it absolutely everywhere. This one, the feature is a little loose, but it still works if you give it a good squeeze. So yeah, this guy has been on permanent display for a while now, and to this day, he's still some people's favorite Superman action figure. Even in a world of 6, 7, 8-inch action figures, all kinds of scale, we have still people who swear that this is their favorite and greatest Superman figure ever made. I'm not going to argue. It's not necessarily mine, but it's definitely one that I would never want to give up, never want to part with. And if I had him as a kid, he definitely would have swooped in and saved the day. Many of my action figure battles Luckily, by 89, I was able to get a Toy Biz Superman, which was kind of a nice little stand-in. But I didn't have this guy until just a couple of years ago. So glad to have him now. And we're going to get a little bit more up close and personal, a little bit more hands-on as we like to do. But yeah, this is what you would have had as a kid back in my day, back in the 80s when everything was cooler, when everything was better. This is what lots of kids had in their toy box. Good old Kenner, always hitting home runs, especially when it came to DC. We're going to be back in a second. Alright, so, as I said, this figure escaped me throughout my entire childhood, but as an adult, I get to correct a lot of mistakes of the past. Finally got my hands on this guy, and really couldn't be happier, even though I did have to fix him up a little bit. Like I said, one day I'll get one that's a little bit more clean, that I won't have to retouch. But, you know, I just wanted to give you guys a general feeling for the figure itself, in case you didn't have one of these guys, in case you're curious. You could find them loose and in reasonable shape anywhere on eBay. They're not exactly rare. It's just because it's Superman, all Superman action figures are kind of pricey, even loose. It's just the way it is. Just like Hulk Hogan, Superman is a character where all of his action figures are going to cost you money, even loose. It's just the way it is. So I forget what I paid for this guy, but it was standard. That's all I remember. It was pretty much just about what everybody else was charging for a figure in this condition. So, and for the cape, that's the one thing. Sometimes it's hard to get them with a cape, or a cape that looks as good as this one. This is probably what put me over, was the fact that this cape actually, I washed it before I put it back on him, but it wasn't even really that dirty. And, you know, a lot of kids lost their capes. I know I lost the capes on the few figures I did have. Like, I lost Darkseid's cape, I lost Martian Manhunter's cape. So I probably would have lost Superman's too, I imagine. But yeah, so that's probably a big reason I picked up this specific Superman figure, because it still had the cape. Logo's not too deteriorated. I don't like how short it is. I've never liked how short it is. But thankfully, there's a guy online called the Cape Master, Michael Marquez. You can look him up on Facebook and eBay, and you can buy a lot of awesome custom capes for the Kenner superpowers, the McFarlane superpowers, the Kenner Batman lines, animated, movie, doesn't matter. The dude's got it all. He's got cloth goods for all your action figures, Masters of the Universe, capes for Keldor, Skeletor. He's got trench coats for Playmates Dick Tracy action figures. This dude, man, he does awesome stuff. So, you know, if you're like me and you don't love this cape, you have options out there. You can go online and you can buy a custom cape and put it on here. I like one that's longer myself, but, you know, I wanted to have just the most authentic version of an original one on display that I possibly could have. So that's why I kept this one the way it is, and I didn't put a newer cape on him. But, yeah, one day I'll have one that I upgrade the cape on, just because I have actually on a couple of my other figures, nicer ones that are really long. They go down pretty much past the calf, and they look really good, and they just make it look more regal and majestic. But again, this was a Silver Age or early 1980s Superman, so it's a really good recreation of him in that way. You know, he did have a smaller cape back then. He did wear a brighter blue back then. This is as close to perfect as an action figure in this scale of Superman could possibly be. They even got the belt loops on the back. They really did their homework on this guy. So, as far as his action feature, like I said, still works. What you would do with him is you'd squeeze the legs together, and he'd throw a punch like that. And, as I said, mine still works really good. He's still ready to rumble with Lex Luthor over here. So, just like in the comic books, or just like in the advertisement, they'd go facing off, and then Superman just knock him the fuck out like that. Knock him the fuck out. That's how you would do it as a kid. You would just it's a kind of limp, nowadays, but the action feature is kind of loose on him. But if you really squeeze it, you can get it to work. Yeah, toys that are almost 40 years old. What are you gonna do? But it's not bad. We'll talk about Lex in another video. One of these times for sure. We talked about the Crisis Lex, so we've seen him before. We'll talk about him in depth another time. But yeah, Kenner DC Superpowers Superman. Really, really cool figure. Definitely glad to finally have him in my collection. Glad to finally talk about him. Because not only is it one of my favorite figures, but it gives me an excuse to talk about a whole lot more figures in the future. Because this opens the door for me to talk about a lot of Kenner Superpowers stuff, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter. As I said, I have a lot of those figures, and why stop there? If we're going to be talking about the Kenner Superpowers figures, we might as well start talking about the McFarlane Superpowers figures too, because that's only kind of fair, right? I mean, they're not the same, and we're going to talk about how they're different, but we are going to talk about each of them on their own, and how they compare, and how they hold up on their own. The capes suck on the new ones, I'll tell you that for free. The capes suck. You gotta go to the Cape Master, bro. He's the guy. Michael Marquez, I don't know how you say it, but look him up on Facebook and check him out on eBay. The Cape Master. He'll hook you up. But yeah, this is an original. Everything about this guy except for some of the red paint. But yeah, definitely a cool thing to have. A great figure to finally add to my collection. So yeah, awesome figure of Superman that Kenner gave us for the Superpowers line back in '84. Man, I'll always be sad I didn't have him as a kid, but it's great to finally have him now. And this opens the door to talk about not just the rest of the Kenner Superpowers line, but the McFarlane Superpowers line, and even the Toy Biz DC Superheroes line. Lots and lots and lots of stuff to talk about. So, definitely excited about that. One of my promises to myself I made for this year was actually getting really old school, and to keep to that, wanted to finally take the plunge, talk about some Kenner DC Superpowers. Had to start it off with Superman. There's nothing better. Now, next time, maybe we might have to take a little detour and talk about something or somebody else maybe for the next DC Superpowers figure video. We'll see. I've got some plans, but I want to keep you hanging just a little bit. Because there's a lot of things we could do. I got some vehicles. I got a lot of cool characters. I got Batman. I got Green Lantern. I got Flash. You never know. You never know what's coming. That's the thing. I'm so fucking random with this shit. But yeah, it's fun for me, and hopefully it's fun for you too. It's been fun taking this trip down memory lane, getting my hands on Superman, showing them off. Like I said, you guys can pick one up on eBay or anywhere for not too much money. It's reasonable. It's going to cost you a few bucks because it's Superman. That's just the way these things go. But yeah, Kenner Superpowers is a great line to collect. The figures are still plentiful, in good condition, reasonably priced for loose, and you can find them at flea markets and elsewhere. So, it's still a great line to collect. They had 1 million of these things, 1 billion of these things made back in the 80s, so you can still find them. If you're a high-end collector and you're willing to spend hundreds of dollars a pop, you can even find them in a package if you're weird like that. I ain't going to do that, but God bless you if you can. I think that's awesome, I just can't do it. But I'm happy to even have them loose like this guy. But yeah, like I said, we took a look at what he looked like in the package, and that was really cool. That'd be a great thing to have for the shelf one day or to put up on the wall. But I don't have one now. But maybe one day. You never know. But for now, I'm happy just to have a loose one. And he goes great on the shelf with my Toy Biz Superman and, some of these other figures. The one thing a lot of these guys had that was weird, though, is sometimes to make them stand right, you kind of had to bend them over backwards like that. Otherwise, they wouldn't stand properly. So, and even now, one of the most notorious things people say about these guys is that they like to fall over. So, there's people online who sell stands specifically for these figures, I'd say they're probably a good investment, depending on how many guys you have. If you're trying to get the full line, that could add up. But if you've got like 5 or 10 of these figures, and you just want them to look good on the shelf, I would definitely say pick up a couple of the stands that you can find online. But, he'll stand, but sometimes he randomly will fall over a little bit. But still a great figure. Like I said, it's got a very vague, kind of loose likeness to Christopher Reeve, which is cool. The blues and reds are exactly classic. Even the length of the cape, it's a little short, but it was standard for that period of time. It's like a really good hybrid of the comic book and the movie in that sense. Excellent job, Kenner. Really, really wish I had him as a kid, but I'm really happy to have him now. So, next time we're going to be taking a look at somebody and something else. I know what it is. You're going to have to wait. Until then, like it, share it, subscribe it, leave comments, because I want to know what you think. I have fun doing this stuff, but I want to know what you have fun and what you take away from this stuff. Is it nostalgia? Do you want to get into collecting this stuff now because you haven't? To seeing something like this get your motor running and make you want to start doing what I'm doing? I hope so. But tell me about it, man. Let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Until then, Rikki Roxx signing off from the vault. Till next time, get yourself some of these DC Superpowers action figures. Maybe get yourself, if you're not a Superman guy, definitely get yourself Batman. He's always good too. If you can't be good, be bad. If you can't be bad, try to be Batman. But most of us can't be Batman. I might be. You never know. I'd never tell you. That'd be fucking stupid. But anyway, until next time, take care, be good, take your toys out of the fucking package, please. And yeah, take care of your shit. That's all I gotta say. Take care of your shit. DC Superpowers, baby, yeah!